The snow fell in thick, silent curtains outside the restaurant window, turning Fifth Avenue into something from a greeting card. Inside, the warmth should have been comforting. The gentle clink of crystal, the murmur of expensive conversation, the scent of rosemary and wine. But all I felt was the cold spreading through my chest as I watched David's mouth move, forming words that were rearranging my entire life. "I'm sorry, Vanessa. I know the timing is terrible, but I can't keep pretending." The engagement ring on my finger suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Around us, couples leaned close over candlelit tables, probably discussing Christmas plans, family dinners, the gifts waiting under their trees. It was Christmas Eve. We were supposed to be celebrating our last Christmas as an engaged couple. In 3 months, I was supposed to walk down an aisle toward this man and promise him forever. Pretending what? My voice came out steadier than I felt, which was something. 3 years of loving David Chen had taught me how to keep my composure even when everything inside was crumbling. He had the decency to look uncomfortable, his fingers fidgeting with his water glass. "That I'm in love with you, that I want this marriage." He finally met my eyes, and I saw something there I'd been refusing to acknowledge for months. Relief. He was relieved to be saying this. "I care about you. You're wonderful. But I don't feel what I'm supposed to feel. And it's not fair to either of us to keep going through the motions." The waiter appeared with our appetizers, scallops for me, tartare for him, and I watched him set them down with the careful precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He didn't notice that my world had just ended. Why would he? To him, we were just another couple having dinner. "Is there someone else?" I asked when the waiter disappeared. David hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Her name is Claire, from my firm. It just happened." He reached across the table like he was going to take my hand, then thought better of it. "I didn't plan this. I didn't want to hurt you. But I can't marry you while having feelings for someone else." I should have thrown my wine in his face. Should have made a scene, demanded explanations, asked how long he'd been lying to me. But I just sat there, looking at this man I'd spent 3 years building a life with, and felt nothing but a hollow ache where love used to live. Maybe I'd known. Perhaps some part of me had recognized the distance growing between us, the way his kisses had become perfunctory, the way he always had an excuse to work late or meet colleagues for drinks. I'd just been too invested in the plan, the wedding, the future, the life we'd carefully constructed, to acknowledge what was falling apart underneath. "Keep the ring," he said quietly. "Sell it if you want. I don't need it back." That was when the anger finally hit, hot and clarifying. "How generous of you, to let me keep the symbol of your lies." "Vanessa, no." I stood, my chair scraping against the floor loud enough to draw glances from neighboring tables. "You don't get to apologize your way out of this. You don't get to make yourself feel better about destroying our relationship on Christmas Eve." I pulled the ring off my finger. It stuck slightly, resisting, and set it on the table between us with a soft click. "Merry Christmas, David. I hope Claire is worth it." I grabbed my coat and purse and walked out before he could respond, before the tears burning behind my eyes could fall in front of him. I'd give him a lot of things, but I wouldn't give him my tears. Not anymore. The cold hit me like a slap when I pushed through the restaurant doors. Snow had accumulated on the sidewalks, and the city glittered with Christmas lights that suddenly felt mocking. Couples passed me arm in arm, laden with shopping bags and holiday cheer. Somewhere, church bells rang. It was the most wonderful time of the year, and I'd just been dumped in the most expensive restaurant in Manhattan. I started walking without direction, just needing to move, to put distance between myself and that table, and the ruins of my carefully planned future. My phone buzzed. Probably David, probably trying to make sure I was okay, as if he had any right to care about that now. I ignored it. The streets blurred past, storefronts decorated with garlands and bows, the Rockefeller Center tree visible in the distance, its lights a beacon of joy I couldn't feel. My feet were going numb in my heels, and I'd forgotten my gloves in the restaurant, but I kept walking. If I stopped, I'd have to think. I'd have to process. I'd have to face the fact that I was 30 years old, newly single, and had just lost not only my fiancé, but the entire life we'd been building together. His apartment. I'd been living in his apartment for 2 years. Where was I supposed to go? My parents had retired to Florida. My best friend Emma was spending Christmas with her in-laws in Vermont. I had colleagues but not close friends, acquaintances but not confidants. I'd let my social circle shrink as David's work consumed more of our time, as wedding planning took over my weekends, as I'd slowly and stupidly made him the center of my universe. I found myself in front of a bar I didn't recognize, somewhere in Midtown, its windows fogged with warmth. A neon sign flickered. Open Christmas Eve. Music thumped from inside. Something classic, maybe Sinatra. I pushed through the door before I could talk myself out of it. The bar was surprisingly full. Apparently, I wasn't the only person seeking refuge from holiday cheer. I claimed a stool at the end of the bar, as far from the clusters of laughing groups as possible, and tried to catch the bartender's attention. "What can I get you?" He was young, covered in tattoos, with kind eyes that suggested he'd seen his share of people drinking away their problems. "Whiskey, neat, whatever's strong." He raised an eyebrow but didn't comment, just poured 3 fingers of amber liquid into a glass and slid it across the bar. I took a sip and felt it burn down my throat, warming the cold that had settled in my bones. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Emma, probably calling to wish me Merry Christmas. I sent her to voicemail. I'd tell her everything tomorrow, when I could form words without wanting to scream. For now, I just wanted to sit in this anonymous bar and pretend I was someone else. Someone whose life hadn't just imploded. "Rough night?" The voice came from my left, low, accented, tinged with amusement. I turned and found myself looking at a man who seemed to occupy more space than his physical form should allow. He sat 2 stools away, a glass of something dark in his hand, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than my car. His hair was dark and swept back from a face that was almost too handsome. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow in the bar's dim lighting. Everything about him screamed danger and money in equal measure. You could say that. I took another sip of whiskey, hoping he'd take the hint and leave me alone. He didn't. Instead, he moved to the stool directly beside me, bringing with him the scent of expensive cologne and something else. Power, maybe, or the kind of confidence that came from always getting what you wanted. "Let me guess," he said, studying me with unnerving intensity. "Boyfriend? Husband? Someone who doesn't deserve you decided to ruin your Christmas." Despite everything, I almost laughed. Fiancé. Soon-to-be ex-fiancé, I suppose. And how do you know he doesn't deserve me? Maybe I'm terrible. "You're not terrible." He said it with such certainty that I turned to look at him thoroughly. Terrible people don't cry alone in bars on Christmas Eve. They throw parties to celebrate their freedom. "I'm not crying. Not yet." His expression softened slightly. "But you will, later, when you're alone. So maybe don't be alone." Warning bells rang in my head. This man was too smooth, too confident, too everything. But I was also numb and hurt, and so tired of being the person who always played it safe, who always followed the rules, who'd just spent 3 years loving someone who couldn't love her back. "Are you hitting on me?" I asked bluntly. "Because if so, your timing is spectacularly bad." He smiled, and his face transformed from dangerous to devastating. "I'm not hitting on you. I'm offering you a distraction. There's a difference." "What kind of distraction?" "The kind where you don't spend Christmas Eve replaying every moment of your failed relationship and wondering what you did wrong." He finished his drink and gestured to the bartender for another. "Spoiler, You probably didn't do anything wrong. He's just an idiot who couldn't recognize what he had. You don't know that. I know people. I know weakness when I see it. He turned those impossible blue eyes on me again. And I know strength. You have more of the latter than you realize. I should have walked away. Should have finished my drink, found a hotel room, and dealt with my broken engagement like a rational adult. But there was something magnetic about this stranger. Something that made me want to stay in his orbit just a little longer. What's your name? I asked. Cristiano. He extended his hand, and when I took it, his grip was warm and firm. Cristiano Marchetti. The name tickled something in my memory. Italian, meaningful, connected to businesses I couldn't quite place. But the whiskey was making everything fuzzy, and I was too tired to analyze it. Vanessa, I said. Vanessa Blake. Well, Vanessa Blake. He released my hand but held my gaze. What are you going to do now? Go home to an empty apartment and feel sorry for yourself? Or let me buy you dinner and show you that tonight doesn't have to be the worst night of your life? Every logical cell in my body screamed that going anywhere with this man was a terrible idea. But logic had gotten me 3 years with David and a broken engagement. Maybe it was time to try something illogical. Dinner, I heard myself say. But somewhere not fancy. I'm done with fancy for tonight. I know just the place. He stood and offered his arm, as if we were in a different century. Come with me, Vanessa Blake. Let's salvage what's left of your Christmas Eve. I took his arm, and the moment my hand touched his sleeve, I felt something shift, like stepping off a cliff into open air, not knowing if I'd fall or fly. The bar's warmth faded as we pushed back out into the snow, and I noticed, for the first time, the black SUV parked illegally at the curb, with a driver already behind the wheel. You have a driver? I asked as Cristiano opened the back door for me. Among other things. He slid in beside me, and the door closed with the solid thunk of expensive engineering. Marco, take us to Giuseppe's in Brooklyn. The driver nodded without speaking, and we pulled into traffic. I should have been afraid. Should have asked more questions about who this man was and why he had drivers and spoke about knowing people with the authority of someone used to power. But my engagement had just ended. My life was in shambles, and sitting next to Cristiano Marchetti felt like the first real thing to happen to me in months. You're not what I expected tonight, I said, as Manhattan blurred past the tinted windows. What did you expect? To spend Christmas Eve alone, crying into cheap wine, questioning every choice I've made since college. That sounds terrible. He shifted to face me, his knee brushing mine in the close quarters. Would you like to know what I expected tonight? What? Business dinner. Fake smiles. People want things from me. The usual performance. His expression grew distant. And then I saw you walk into that bar looking like your world had just ended, and I thought, there's someone who's forgotten how to perform. Someone being devastatingly, dangerously real. Real isn't usually considered dangerous. It is in my world. He said it lightly, but something in his tone made me look at him more closely. In the passing streetlights, I caught glimpses of things I'd missed in the bar. A thin scar along his jaw, the slight crook in his nose suggesting it had been broken, the way his eyes constantly scanned our surroundings, even in conversation. What world is that? I asked carefully. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes this time. The kind where people perform instead of feeling. Where everything is a transaction, where real is the most dangerous thing you can be. He leaned slightly closer. But you don't have to worry about that tonight. Tonight, you're just a beautiful woman who deserves a better Christmas Eve than the one she was having. And I'm just a man who's offering to provide it. The SUV pulled up to a small restaurant in Brooklyn I never would have found on my own. Brick facade, no sign, just a red door with a wreath. But when Cristiano opened it, warmth and noise and the smell of garlic and tomatoes spilled out like an embrace. An older man with a magnificent mustache appeared immediately, his face lighting up when he saw Cristiano. They exchanged rapid Italian, too fast for me to follow, and the man kept glancing at me with obvious curiosity and approval. Then Cristiano guided me through the crowded restaurant to a private room in the back, where a single table waited, already set with wine and bread and candles. "You planned this," I said as he pulled out my chair. "I called ahead while you were finishing your drink." He settled across from me, the candlelight catching in his eyes. "I told you I know how to provide distractions." Servers appeared with food I hadn't ordered. Pasta that melted on my tongue. Saltimbocca that tasted like someone's grandmother had poured love into every bite. Vegetables roasted with herbs I couldn't identify but desperately wanted to know. Cristiano kept my wine glass full and asked me questions that had nothing to do with my broken engagement, where I'd grown up, what I'd studied in college, the small moments that had shaped me into who I was. And slowly, impossibly, I felt the hollow ache in my chest start to ease. Not disappear. That would take time, but soften into something bearable. Cristiano listened with the kind of attention that made me feel like I was the only person in his universe, and his own stories. Carefully edited, I suspected, but fascinating nonetheless. Painted a picture of a life lived in shadows and power. "You never told me what you do," I said as dessert arrived, something chocolate and obscene. "I manage family businesses, import, export, and real estate, the boring details of making money." He said it casually, but I caught the edge of something unspoken underneath. "You're lying," I said, surprising both of us. Maybe it was the wine or the exhaustion or the fact that I had nothing left to lose. "Not about the businesses, but about them being boring. Nothing about you is boring." He studied me for a long moment, then laughed. A real laugh, surprised and genuine. "You're dangerous, Vanessa Blake." "How so?" "Because you see things. Most people look at me and see what I want them to see. But you look deeper." He reached across the table and caught my hand, his thumb tracing across my knuckles. "That's going to get you in trouble." Maybe I'm tired of being safe. Something ignited in his eyes, something that made my breath catch. "Don't say things like that unless you mean them." "What if I do mean them?" He stood abruptly, still holding my hand, and pulled me to my feet. "Then come with me. Let me show you what happens when you stop being safe." I should have asked where, should have demanded details, explanations, and assurances. Instead, I let him lead me back through the restaurant, pausing only for him to press a roll of bills into the owner's hand and exchange a few more words in Italian. Then we were back in the SUV, Marco driving us deeper into Brooklyn, away from the tourist areas and into neighborhoods that looked harder, grittier, more real. The car stopped in front of a warehouse that had been converted into something else. I could hear music thumping from inside, see lights flashing through high windows. Cristiano opened my door and extended his hand. "What is this place?" I asked. "A club I own, private, exclusive." He pulled me close as we walked toward the entrance, his arm around my waist in a gesture that felt possessive. "Trust me?" It was insane. I'd known this man for 3 hours. I knew nothing about him except that he was dangerous and magnetic, looking at me like I was something precious he'd found and wasn't sure whether to keep or let go. "Yes," I whispered, "I trust you." His expression shifted. Surprise, pleasure, something darker. "Then let's give you a Christmas Eve worth remembering." Inside, the club was a sensory explosion. Pulsing music, bodies moving in the strobe lights, the smell of sweat and perfume, and something electric in the air. But Cristiano didn't stop on the main floor. He led me up a staircase to a VIP area where the music was muted enough to talk, where people lounged on leather couches and eyed us with open curiosity. They all knew him. I could see it in how they reacted, straightening slightly, their attention sharpening, the way you'd respond to someone with absolute power. And they were curious about me, this unknown woman at his side. He settled us on a couch in the corner, pulling me close against his side with casual possession. A waitress appeared immediately with champagne, and Cristiano poured 2 glasses, handing me one. "To new beginnings," he said, touching his glass to mine. To forgetting, I countered and drank. The night blurred into moments. Cristiano's hand on my back, warm and steady. His laugh when I said something that surprised him. The way he leaned close to speak directly into my ear, his breath warm against my skin. Dancing on the edge of the VIP area, his hands on my waist, our bodies finding a rhythm that had nothing to do with the music and everything to do with the chemistry crackling between us. At some point, a man approached, broad-shouldered with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, and spoke to Cristiano in rapid Italian. Cristiano's expression hardened, and he responded in the same language, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. The man retreated, but not before shooting me a look that made my skin prickle. "What was that about?" I asked again when we were alone. "Business." He pulled me closer. "Nothing that concerns you." It looked like it concerned me. "You're with me. That makes you protected. That's all you need to know." He tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Do you want to leave? If this is too much, I can take you home right now." I should have said yes. Should have recognized that I was in over my head, that this man and his world were far more complicated and dangerous than I'd understood. But the alternative was David's apartment, where all my things still sat mixed with his, where the ghost of our relationship would haunt every room. "I don't want to leave," I said. "I don't want to be alone tonight." "Then you won't be." He stood and pulled me up with him. "Come on. I'm taking you somewhere else. Somewhere just for us." We left the club through a back entrance, Marco already waiting with the SUV. The drive was longer this time, taking us out of Brooklyn and into Queens, then beyond, until we were in neighborhoods I didn't recognize. Finally, we pulled through iron gates into a property that took my breath away, a modern house all glass and angles, perched on a hill with views of the city glittering in the distance. "Where are we?" I asked as Cristiano helped me out of the car. "My home, the one place I can actually be myself." He kept his hand on the small of my back as we walked to the entrance. "You said you didn't want to be alone. Neither do I." Inside, the house was surprisingly warm. Minimalist but comfortable, with art on the walls and books on the shelves that suggested someone actually lived here, not just occupied space. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city view, and I drifted toward them, pressing my hands against the cold glass. "It's beautiful," I breathed. "So are you." He came up behind me, not touching but close enough that I could feel his warmth. "Vanessa, I need to tell you something." I turned to face him. "What?" "My world is complicated, dangerous in ways you can't understand yet. If you stay tonight, if we cross this line, there's no going back to who you were before. You'll become part of my life, and that comes with consequences." His expression was more serious than I'd seen all night. "So I'm giving you one chance to walk away. I can have Marco take you anywhere you want. A hotel, a friend's house, wherever. No judgment, no hard feelings." My heart hammered against my ribs. "And if I stay? If you stay?" He reached up and cupped my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone with aching gentleness. "You're mine, under my protection, part of my world, and I don't let go of what's mine easily." It was possessive, probably problematic, and should have sent me running. But I'd spent 3 years with a man who couldn't commit, who'd treated our relationship like something temporary he was testing out. And here was Cristiano Marchetti, dangerous and intense, offering me absolute certainty even if I didn't fully understand what it meant. "I'm staying," I whispered. He kissed me then, and it was nothing like kissing David had been. Safe and comfortable and familiar. This was fire and demand, and a hunger that matched something I hadn't known was living inside me. His hands tangled in my hair, and I grabbed the lapels of his suit, pulling him closer, needing to feel something real after months of going through motions. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against mine. "You're going to destroy me, Vanessa Blake. Or you'll destroy me, never." He said it with such ferocity that I believed him. "I protect what's mine, and you're mine now. Do you understand that?" Yes. And the terrifying thing was, I did understand. In one impossible night, I'd gone from being David's abandoned fiancé to being claimed by a man who looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. He led me through the house to a bedroom that was all clean lines and comfortable luxury. But instead of pushing further, he just pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me like he could shield me from everything that had happened tonight. Sleep, he murmured into my hair. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what comes next. Tonight, just let me hold you. So I did. I let this dangerous stranger hold me while the city glittered outside his windows and Christmas morning crept closer. And for the first time since David had shattered my world, I felt safe. I woke to pale winter sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the scent of coffee drifting from somewhere deeper in the house. For a moment, I couldn't place where I was. The sheets were too soft, the ceiling too high, the silence too complete. Then it all came rushing back. David's betrayal, the bar, Cristiano's impossible blue eyes, and an even more impossible proposition. You're mine now. I sat up slowly, finding myself still in last night's clothes minus my shoes, which had been neatly placed beside the bed. Someone, Cristiano presumably, had covered me with a blanket at some point. My phone sat on the nightstand, showing 15 missed calls from David and a dozen texts I didn't have the energy to read yet. Following the coffee smell led me through Cristiano's house in daylight, which was even more impressive than it had been in darkness. Everything was carefully curated, expensive but not ostentatious, personal but revealing little. A home built by someone who understood the value of privacy. I found him in the kitchen, leaning against the counter in jeans and a simple black sweater, looking somehow more dangerous in casual clothes than he had in his suit. He smiled when he saw me, slow and warm. "Merry Christmas, Vanessa. Merry Christmas." I accepted the coffee he held out, grateful for something to do with my hands. I don't know what I should do, actually. This is uncharted territory. How about breakfast? Then we'll figure out the rest. He gestured to the island, where he'd laid out pastries and fruit. Unless you need to be somewhere? No. The reality of my situation crashed over me again. I was supposed to spend today with David, his family. They probably don't know yet that I couldn't finish the sentence. Then they're in for an unpleasant surprise. Cristiano came around the island and tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. But that's not your problem anymore. You don't owe him or his family anything. Not your time, not your explanations, not your tears. I keep thinking I should feel sadder, more devastated. But mostly I feel relieved, and that makes me wonder if I ever really loved him at all. Or maybe he just wore you down so slowly you didn't notice you were dying inside. His thumb brushed across my jaw. I see that a lot. People staying in situations that are killing them because leaving seems harder than enduring. Is that what you do? See people's situations? It's part of what I do. He released me and moved back to his coffee, giving me space. I read people. Their motivations, their weaknesses, what they want versus what they think they want. It's how I've survived in my world. Which is what, exactly? You said family business, but that could mean anything. He studied me for a long moment, clearly debating how much to reveal. My family controls significant operations in this city. Import, export, certain entertainment venues, real estate development, and lending. We have interests in legitimate businesses and some that operate in grayer areas. The Mafia. I said it flatly. You're in the Mafia. That word is reductive. But yes, essentially. He set his coffee down and crossed his arms. My grandfather built the organization. My father expanded it. And I've spent the last 5 years trying to legitimize as much as possible while maintaining the power structures that keep us safe. It's complicated, often dangerous, and definitely not what someone like you signed up for when you agreed to have dinner with me last night. I should have been terrified, should have grabbed my shoes, called an Uber, and gotten as far from Cristiano Marchetti as possible. but instead, I felt oddly calm. Maybe because nothing could shock me after David's betrayal. Maybe because Cristiano's honesty felt more trustworthy than David's 3 years of lies. So when you said I'm yours now, under your protection, you meant that literally. Yes. Anyone who knows me knows you're with me. That means you're untouchable. But it also means you're visible in ways you weren't before. He moved closer again, intensity radiating from him. I can undo this, Vanessa. I can have Marco take you to a hotel, wire you enough money to get on your feet, and make sure you're safe. You don't have to be part of this just because you had a bad night and I was there. What if I want to be part of it? Why would you want that? Because for the first time in 3 years, someone is being completely honest with me. Because you looked at me like I mattered when I felt invisible. Because I set my coffee down and met his gaze directly. Because I spent my whole life being safe and careful and following the rules, and it got me dumped on Christmas Eve. Maybe it's time to try something different. His expression shifted. Surprise, heat, something almost like pride. You understand what you're saying? This isn't a temporary rebellion. Once you're in my world, it changes you. Maybe I want to be changed. He closed the distance between us and kissed me, hard and claiming, his hands framing my face like I was something precious he'd found and refused to lose. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. Then you're mine. Completely. No half measures, no second guessing. His thumb traced my lower lip. I'll protect you, provide for you, keep you safe from everything in my world that could hurt you. But you have to trust me. Can you do that? Yes. The word felt like jumping off a cliff, but I said it anyway. Good. He kissed me again, softer this time. Then, first things first. We're getting your things from your ex's apartment. You're moving in here. Cristiano, that's too fast. No, it's practical. You can't go back to living with a man who betrayed you. And I'm not letting you stay in some hotel while we figure this out. You're here, with me, where I can keep you safe. He pulled out his phone. I'll send people to collect your belongings. You need to make a list of what you want. The next few hours passed in a blur of logistics. I made calls I'd been dreading, to David, telling him I'd be getting my things, and he should make himself scarce. To Emma, who'd returned my panicked Christmas morning calls with increasing worry, until I finally answered and tried to explain the unexplainable. She was horrified about David, confused about Cristiano, and ultimately just relieved I was safe. Are you sure about this? She asked. Moving in with a man you just met? No, but I'm sure I can't go back to who I was before, and Cristiano is offering me a way forward. I watched him through the windows, pacing on the terrace while talking on his phone, all controlled power and dangerous grace. I know it sounds insane, but Emma, he looks at me like I'm the most important thing in his world. When was the last time David looked at me like that? She was quiet for a moment. Never. David never looked at you like that. She sighed. Just be careful, and call me every day so I know you're okay. I will, I promise. By evening, my belongings had been efficiently packed and delivered to Cristiano's house by his employees. Silent, professional, asking no questions. Cristiano had converted a guest room into a closet for me, with space for my clothes, books, and the small pieces of my life I'd managed to build with David. It felt surreal, seeing my things mixed with his, like we were playing house in some incredibly expensive dollhouse. Hungry? Cristiano appeared in the doorway, watching me unpack. I was thinking we could order in, unless you're sick of Italian food. I could never be sick of Italian food. I hung up the last of my dresses, a pathetic collection compared to the designer pieces I'd seen in his closet. Thank you for this, for everything. I know it's probably weird, having some random woman move into your house. You're not random. He came into the room and caught my hand, pulling me close. And I don't do anything I don't want to do. I want you here, Vanessa. Not out of pity or obligation, but because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to want something that isn't about power or control or the endless chess game of my world. What does it feel like? Dangerous, exciting, real. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that felt more intimate than anything we'd done last night. Come on. Let's eat and watch terrible Christmas movies and pretend we're normal people for one night. So we did. We ordered pizza. Apparently even Mafia bosses appreciated good pizza, and settled on his massive couch to watch Elf, while snow fell outside the windows. Cristiano's arm stayed around my shoulders, and I found myself relaxing into his warmth, the terror and adrenaline of the last 24 hours finally easing into something calmer. "Can I ask you something?" I said during a commercial break. "Anything." "Why me? Really? You could have left me in that bar. Could have sent me home in a car and forgotten about me. Why bring me into your life?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because you were the first real thing I'd seen in months. Everyone in my world performs. They show me what they think I want to see, say what they think I want to hear. But you walked into that bar with your heart broken and your defenses down, and you were just devastatingly honest. I couldn't walk away from that. Even though I'm completely wrong for your world, especially because you're wrong for my world. He shifted to look at me directly. You make me remember there's more to life than power and territory, and the endless violence of maintaining control. You make me want to be someone worth knowing beyond the fear and respect. I think you're already worth knowing. You don't know me yet. Not really. His expression darkened. There are things I've done, Vanessa. Choices I've made to protect my family, my people. Things that would make you look at me differently. Try me. He studied my face, clearly weighing something. A year ago, one of my father's old rivals tried to take over our operations in the Bronx. He kidnapped one of our people, tortured him for information. By the time we found him, he was barely alive. Cristiano's voice went flat, emotionless. I tracked down the man responsible, and I made sure he understood what happens when you touch what's mine. You killed him! Among other things. Yes. He watched me carefully, waiting for my reaction. That's who I am, Vanessa. Someone who will do whatever necessary to protect what matters. And now that includes you. So if that terrifies you, if you want to leave, I'll understand. But I need you to know what you're committing to. I should have been horrified. Should have run screaming from this beautiful, dangerous man who'd just casually admitted to murder. But all I felt was a strange sense of security. The knowledge that someone this powerful, this ruthless, had decided I was worth protecting. I'm not leaving, I said quietly. I told you, I want to be changed. I want to be someone different than the woman who was so safe and careful that she didn't even notice her fiancé falling out of love with her. If that means being with someone dangerous, then so be it. You're insane. But he smiled when he said it, and pulled me into his lap, my legs straddling his hips. Beautiful and brave and absolutely insane. Maybe that's what it takes to be with you. Maybe. He kissed me, slow and deep, his hands sliding up my back. Stay with me, Vanessa Blake. Let me show you what it means to be completely, utterly claimed by someone. Yes. I kissed him back. And this time, when the kiss deepened, I didn't pull away. I let myself fall into the heat and danger of wanting him, of being wanted by him with an intensity that bordered on obsession. We didn't sleep that night. We stayed tangled together on his couch, then later in his bed, exploring the connection that had sparked the moment we met. And when Christmas morning dawned, the real Christmas morning, not the one I'd woken to after our first night, I found myself thinking that maybe getting dumped on Christmas Eve was the best thing that could have happened to me, because it led me to Cristiano, and to a version of myself I'd never known existed, brave enough to choose danger over safety, strong enough to claim what I wanted instead of settling for what was convenient. The next few weeks passed in a strange new rhythm. I called Vivian at work and explained I needed time off. Family emergency, deliberately vague. She granted it without question, probably relieved not to deal with my post-breakup drama. David tried calling for the first few days, then the attempts petered out as he presumably moved on with Claire. Meanwhile, I learned to navigate Cristiano's world. His house became my home, and I slowly understood the extent of his empire. The legitimate businesses that served as fronts, the network of people who owed him loyalty or feared his retribution, and the delicate balance he maintained among the factions competing for power in the city. He carefully introduced me to his inner circle. Marco, his driver and bodyguard, who I learned had been with the family for 20 years. Sophia, his cousin and financial manager, who regarded me with open suspicion until I proved I wasn't trying to take advantage of Cristiano. Antonio, his oldest friend and enforcer, whose easy smile hid a capacity for violence that matched Cristiano's own. They all treated me with careful respect, not because they liked me, but because Cristiano had made it clear I was under his protection. And in his world, that meant something absolute. But there were complications I hadn't anticipated. Women who'd been interested in Cristiano before I appeared, who now regarded me with barely concealed hostility. Business associates who saw me as a potential weakness, something they could exploit to gain leverage. And underlying everything, a sense of danger I couldn't quite name, like being watched by predators I couldn't see. "You're being paranoid," I told myself one afternoon, 3 weeks into my new life. I'd gone to a coffee shop in Manhattan, my first solo trip since moving in with Cristiano, and couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on my back. But when I turned to look, there was a man at a corner table, watching me with undisguised interest. Tall, blonde, with the kind of smile that probably worked on most women, but just made my skin crawl. When he saw me notice him, he stood and crossed to my table. "Vanessa Blake." He said my name like he knew things about me I didn't know myself. Or should I say Vanessa Marchetti? I hear congratulations are in order. "We're not married." I kept my voice level. "And you are. Someone who thinks Cristiano is making a mistake. Someone who wonders what happens when he realizes you're just a liability wrapped in a pretty package." He leaned close enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive and cloying. "How long do you think his protection lasts?" "Until you become more trouble than you're worth." "Who are you?" I demanded, my heart racing. "Tell Cristiano that Victor sends his regards, and that I'm very interested in meeting his new pet project." He straightened and walked away before I could respond, leaving me shaking with adrenaline and anger. I called Cristiano immediately. He answered on the first ring, his voice sharp with concern. "What's wrong?" "Someone just approached me. Said his name was Victor. He knew who I was, knew about us." I forced myself to breathe slowly. "He said you're making a mistake with me." Silence on the other end, but I could feel his rage through the phone line. "Where are you?" "Coffee shop in Midtown, the one near your office." "Stay there. I'm sending Marco. Don't talk to anyone else. Don't move until he arrives." His voice dropped to something deadly. "And Vanessa? You did exactly right by calling me immediately." Marco arrived within 10 minutes, his expression grimmer than I'd ever seen it. He escorted me to the SUV without speaking, and we drove not to Cristiano's house but to his office, a sleek high-rise in Midtown where his legitimate businesses operated. Cristiano met me in the lobby, and the relief in his eyes when he saw me was almost painful. He pulled me into his arms without caring who was watching, his hold nearly crushing. "Are you hurt?" he asked against my hair. "No, just shaken." I pulled back enough to see his face. "Who is Victor?" "Competition. Russian mob, trying to expand into territories my family controls." His jaw tightened. "He's been testing boundaries for months, but approaching you directly, that's an escalation." "What does that mean?" "It means I need to make very clear what happens to people who threaten what's mine." He kept one arm around me as we walked to the elevator. "It also means you don't go anywhere alone anymore. Marco or one of my other people will be with you at all times." "Cristiano, that's crazy." It's necessary. The elevator doors closed, sealing us in privacy. Victor approaching you wasn't random. He's sending a message that he can reach you, which means he can reach me. I can't let that stand. So what are you going to do? His expression went cold, and I saw the ruthless man underneath the lover I'd come to know. Send my own message, one he won't forget. Over the next week, I learned what that meant. Cristiano disappeared for hours at a time, coming home late with blood on his knuckles or exhaustion carved into his face. He never told me details, but I heard things. Whispers from Sophia, terse phone calls Marco took in my presence. Victor's operations were being systematically dismantled. His people were disappearing or switching allegiances. His territory was being absorbed into Cristiano's empire, and through it all, Cristiano made sure I was safe. Guards I didn't see but could sense. Routes that changed daily. His constant attention, even when he wasn't physically present. Texts checking in, calls to hear my voice. The way his eyes would find me the moment he came home, cataloging that I was whole and safe. "I'm sorry," he said one night, collapsing onto the couch beside me. It was 2 a.m, and he looked exhausted. "This isn't what you signed up for. Stop apologizing." I threaded my fingers through his hair, feeling him relax slightly under my touch. "You warned me your world was dangerous. I chose this anyway." "You chose it before you understood what it meant." "Maybe, but I'm choosing it again now." I made him look at me. "I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be protected from reality, Cristiano. I see what you're doing, and I understand why. Stop treating me like I'm going to break." "I'm terrified you're going to break." He said it so quietly I almost didn't hear. "Victor knows how important you are to me. That makes you the perfect target. And if something happened to you because I brought you into this world, then we deal with it together." I kissed him, slow and deep. But I'm not leaving, and I'm not letting fear control my life. I did that with David for 3 years, and it nearly destroyed me. I won't do it again. He pulled me into his lap, holding me like I was the only thing keeping him anchored. "How did I get so lucky?" "You bought me dinner when I was falling apart. That's hardly luck." "It's everything." He kissed my temple, my jaw, my throat. "You're everything." We didn't talk about Victor that night. We just held each other, and remembered why we'd taken this insane leap together in the first place. And when morning came, Cristiano was already gone, leaving a note that he'd be back by evening. But evening came and went without him, then midnight, then the dawn of the following day. His phone went to voicemail. Marco wouldn't tell me anything beyond "he's handling business." Sophia avoided my calls entirely. By the second day, I was frantic. I'd called everyone I could think of, demanded information from Marco, even threatened to go to the police if someone didn't tell me where Cristiano was. But his people closed ranks, protecting him. And by extension, protecting me from knowledge they thought I couldn't handle. On the 3rd day, Sophia finally showed up at the house. Her expression was carefully neutral, which terrified me more than panic would have. "Is he dead?" I asked before she could speak. "No, but there were complications with the Victor situation." She gestured for me to sit, which I refused. "Cristiano is fine, but one of our operations went wrong. There was a confrontation. He had to go underground until things settled." "Take me to him." "That's not possible." "I don't care if it's possible." I grabbed my coat. "He's been protecting me for weeks. Now it's my turn. So either you tell me where he is, or I start making phone calls to every contact in his phone until someone does." Sophia stared at me for a long moment, then smiled. The first genuine smile she'd ever given me. "He said you were tougher than you looked. Fine. But you follow my instructions exactly. The place we're going, if we're followed, if anyone connects you to it, it puts everyone at risk, including Cristiano." "I understand." The drive took over an hour, Sophia taking a deliberately convoluted route through Brooklyn and Queens, before finally stopping at an ordinary-looking apartment building in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. She led me up 4 flights of stairs to a unit at the end of a dingy hallway, knocked 3 times in a specific pattern, and waited. The door opened to reveal Antonio, his expression darkening when he saw me. "Sophia, what the hell?" She threatened to call everyone on Cristiano's phone. "Would you rather deal with that?" Sophia pushed past him, pulling me with her. The apartment was small and sparse, clearly a safe house, not a home. And in the living room, lying on a couch with his shirt off and bandages wrapped around his ribs, was Cristiano. He sat up the moment he saw me, wincing at the movement. "Vanessa, what are you shouldn't be here." I crossed to him and carefully, gently pressed my palm against his chest, feeling his heart beat strong and alive under my hand. "You've been gone for 3 days. Your people wouldn't tell me anything. Did you really think I'd sit home and wait? I was trying to keep you safe, and I was trying not to lose my mind thinking you were dead." I sat beside him, cataloging his injuries with my eyes: bruised ribs, split knuckles, a cut on his temple that had been stitched. "What happened?" He glanced at Sophia and Antonio, who took the hint and left us alone. When the door closed, he took my hand and pressed it more firmly against his chest. "Victor set a trap, made it look like one of his operations was vulnerable, then ambushed my people when we moved on it. 4 of my men were injured. 1 nearly died." His expression went bleak. "I got them out, but we had to go to ground. The police are asking questions. Victor's people are looking for me. It's a mess. How long do you have to stay here?" "However long it takes for things to cool down. A week, maybe more." He cupped my face with his free hand. "I'm sorry. I know you were worried." I wasn't worried. I was terrified. I leaned into his touch. "Don't do that again. Don't disappear on me without a word. I can handle dangerous, Cristiano, but I can't handle not knowing if you're alive." "I'll do better." He pulled me carefully against his side, mindful of his injuries. "But you need to go back to the house. It's not safe for you to be here." "Then I'll leave when you leave." I settled against him. "But I'm not going anywhere right now." He tried to argue, but I could see the relief in his eyes that I'd come, that I'd fought my way past his protective walls to be with him. So he held me, and I held him. And we stayed like that while Sophia and Antonio guarded the door, and the city beyond continued its relentless motion. "I love you," he said quietly. I don't think I've said that yet, but I do. Completely and irrationally, and probably dangerously. I love you, Vanessa Blake. My throat tightened with emotion. I love you too, even though you're complicated and dangerous, and your world is completely insane. I love you anyway. We're both insane then. Probably. I kissed him carefully, avoiding his injuries. But at least we're insane together. We stayed at the safe house for 4 more days. Sophia brought food and updates. Antonio coordinated with Cristiano's other people, managing the crisis. And I stayed by Cristiano's side, changing his bandages, making sure he rested, being the support he'd been for me since Christmas Eve. On the 5th day, word came that Victor had been arrested on unrelated charges. Tax evasion, money laundering, enough to keep him locked up for years. Without their leader, his organization fractured, and various lieutenants either joined Cristiano's network or fled the city entirely. The threat was over, at least for now. We can go home, Cristiano said, relief evident in his voice. And we did. We went back to his beautiful house with its city views and comfortable spaces. But something had shifted between us. We'd weathered our first real crisis together, proven we could survive the violence and chaos of his world. We weren't just playing at being together anymore. We were committed, bound by something more profound than attraction or convenience. A week later, Cristiano took me to meet his mother. She lived in a mansion in New Jersey that made his house look modest, surrounded by family, luxury, and the weight of decades spent building the Marchetti empire. She was elegant and sharp-eyed, studying me with open curiosity over Sunday dinner. "So, you're the woman who's captured my son's attention," she said in accented English. "Tell me, Vanessa, what do you bring to this family?" "Honestly, nothing except myself." I met her gaze steadily. "I'm not connected, not wealthy, not useful to your organization. I'm just someone who loves your son and isn't afraid of his world." She smiled slowly. Most women would have lied, given me some pretty answers about devotion or family values. She reached across the table and patted my hand. "You're either very brave or foolish. I haven't decided which yet." "Both, probably," Cristiano said, his hand finding mine under the table. "Good." His mother sat back, satisfied. "Stupid women are easy to manipulate. Brave women are dangerous. My son needs danger. Welcome to the family, Vanessa." That night, back at home, Cristiano pulled me into his arms on the terrace, where we could see the whole city stretched before us. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For staying. For being brave enough to choose this life when you could have chosen something easier." He kissed my forehead. "For seeing me. Really seeing me. And not running away." "Where would I run to? You're the most real thing in my life." I turned in his arms to face him fully. "Besides, I was dumped on Christmas Eve and told I'd be spending it alone. Instead, I got pulled into your world and your life. I'd say that's an upgrade. Even with the danger, the violence, Victor and whoever comes next. Even with all of that." I kissed him, pouring everything I felt into it, love and fear and absolute certainty. "You pulled me close and said, 'You're with me now. I'm holding you to that.'" "Forever," he promised. "You're with me forever, Vanessa Blake. And I'm with you, no matter what comes next." We stood there as snow began to fall, our first snow together since that Christmas Eve that had changed everything. And I thought about the woman I'd been then, sitting in that restaurant, overseeing her planned life fall apart. She couldn't have imagined this, standing in the arms of a dangerous man who loved her with frightening intensity, having chosen chaos and truth over safety and lies. But she would have been glad. Because this, Cristiano's arms around me, the city glittering below us, the promise of forever stretching ahead despite all the dangers we'd face, this was so much better than the life that had ended over scallops and betrayal. This was real. This was mine. This was everything. And I wasn't letting go.